All right, here we go, guys. The second part of Chapter 12, Red Kayak by Priscilla Cummings. I threw myself into working for Mrs. D'Angelo. After school, Saturdays. Sometimes when I arrived on the weekend, she wasn't even out of bed. She hid a key in the garage so I could get into the house to use the bathroom or get a drink, and one morning, when I let myself in, I heard her upstairs throwing up. I worried she was making herself sick from being so depressed and so alone. Her mother, her sister, a friend, they'd all come and gone, but I was afraid to talk to her, and so I just kept myself busy. And boy, there was plenty to do at the D'Angelo's place. Every other week I mowed the lawn and trimmed, which took all day. And then I mulched the gardens, weeded, planted, and watered everything. She had a whole truckload of stuff delivered: impatiens, marigolds, geraniums, miniature roses. She showed me where she wanted everything planted, and the day she stood there pointing around at her garden was the first time she seemed just a little bit better. I guess I got caught up in the moment. "You get a lot of sun here. You ought to plant yourself a butterfly garden, like my mom," I suggested. "A butterfly garden," she repeated, like it was a real enchanting idea. She crossed her arms, thinking, while I dug a hole for one of the rose bushes. "We get a lot of butterflies," I said, angling the shovel. "There are certain plants, then, that they like?" "Oh, are you kidding?" I had to stop for a second to expound a little because I know a lot about butterflies. First off, they don't like red. They like yellow and purple and blue the best. "Really?" "Clusters, too," I said, encouraged by her interest. As opposed to like a single plant. And they need some flat rocks so they can warm up before they take off, plus a low-lying source of water. You could put in a lily pad pond or just a bird bath if you didn't want to go to the trouble. She glanced around the yard. "Well, how about by the pool?" "Perfect. Any place that gets a lot of sun." I grinned and went back to digging. "How long has your mom had a butterfly garden?" she asked. I had to stop and think. 6 years, I replied, dumping the earth beside the hole, ever since my sister died. Boy, I knew the instant I said it that I shouldn't have, because it would make her think of Ben, and there I was, digging holes. Warily, I looked up. Mrs. D'Angelo looked startled. "You lost a sister, Brady?" "Yeah," I acknowledged with a sigh, "when she was 5 months old." She put a hand up on her chest. "Oh, it's okay now," I rushed to assure her, even though it wasn't really true. I mean, that was a long time ago, and the butterfly garden has helped. Her wide, mournful eyes had settled on me, and I could tell that they weren't going anywhere until I explained that a little bit better. My mom, she believes that butterflies are like little spirits. Who knows? Maybe even my sisters," I said, shrugging because I'd never been sure about that. Mrs. D'Angelo nodded. "Would you excuse me, Brady?" she said before rushing off. I kicked the shovel because I knew I'd stirred things up. I wondered if she'd want me back after that, but she did. She even started asking me what I like for sandwiches and drinks, and at noon she would sit down with me to chit-chat for a few minutes while I ate. One day we talked about butterflies again, and I told her about butterfly eyes. "Oh, they can look forward and backward at the same time," I said. "It's true because they have hundreds of separate lenses. It's like looking out from a bowl, a fisheye, panoramic view of the world." Her dark eyes sparkled. "You don't believe me? Try sneaking up on a butterfly," I challenged her. "Oh, I believe you." I have to say, it was terrific to see her smile again, even if she did still look pretty run down. Digger was still being a total jerk, avoiding me. But JT started talking to me in school. "We need to get together," he kept saying. But neither one of us picked up the phone. I was busy, and I figured he was too, working his butt off at that chicken farm after school. Plus, we had final exams coming up. It's funny. Even though I came home exhausted every day that I worked for Mrs. D'Angelo, I was getting some of my old energy back. Evenings, I threw the ball for Tilly, helped Dad repair some of his broken crab pots, and even offered to help my mother with the dishes one night when it wasn't my turn. "Mrs. D'Angelo's curious about your garden," I told Mom as I plunged my hands into the soapy water. My mother was putting leftovers away. She is? Yeah, she's been reading up on it. Just today, she asked about your foundation shrubs. So I told her about the butterfly bush and that smaller one, the purple one. Lavender, Mom gently reminded me as she snapped the lid on a bowl of leftover coleslaw. Lots of different shrubs would work, though. Azaleas, rhododendrons, spice bush, a wisteria vine. Mom, I told her about the butterfly bush and the lavender because they get a lot of butterflies. I didn't know all the other names. You do. Maybe you could go over one day and give her some advice. Me? Mom put the bowl in the refrigerator and stood closing the door with her back to me. Yeah, you, Mom. It might be nice. No one ever goes to see her. A couple of people from her church now and then, but they don't stay long. I rinsed a pot and I set it on the dish strainer. She turned around. Marcellus hasn't come back yet? No. She even told me one day that he blames her for what happened. Mom winced. She did? Yeah. I guess she wanted me to know why he wasn't there. I feel sorry for her because she's so alone. She spends the first half of the day in bed and then she just sort of goes through the motions the rest of the day. Mom retrieved a basket from the table and put the leftover rolls in a Ziploc bag. Oh, that poor thing. She must be so depressed. I don't know about depressed, I said, scrubbing hard on a blackened skillet, but she sure is sick a lot. Almost every morning she throws up. Brady! Mom swung around to look at me. What? Is Mrs. D'Angelo pregnant? I stopped scrubbing. Well, how would I know? Mom's eyes flitted sideways. She ran a hand back through her hair. I'm sorry. Of course you wouldn't know, but those are pretty classic symptoms. Morning nausea, fatigue. I didn't say anything, just went back to cleaning that skillet. Well, is there something you can do for her? Mom persisted. Well, that's what got me. I stopped scrubbing and I turned around to confront my mother. I don't know what more I can do, but you know what? Maybe you could try to help her too. Gee whiz, you're a mother. You lost a kid. You have things to say to her that I can't. Never had I spoken to my mother like that before. Never. I let my breath out and I stared at the faucet, then rested my wrists on the edge of the sink, bracing myself for Mom's angry reaction, but it never came. You're right, Mom said quietly. She wiped her hands on a dish towel. I should go see her. She untied her apron, folded it, and set it on the counter. I should go see her right now. And I watched her go. Across the kitchen and out the door. I don't know what my mom said, but I do know this. A few days later, Mrs. D'Angelo had one fine butterfly garden out there by her pool. I know this because I planted it. She had a butterfly bush and yellow sunflowers, cosmos, daisies, daylilies, 2 bird baths full of water. I even planted some milkweed, violets, and wispy saltgrass for the caterpillars. When butterflies are in their larval stage. And then I bordered all of it with dozens of miniature marigolds. Not that I was keeping track, but it had to be 6 weeks since Ben died, and I was beginning to feel things shift just a little for the better. At the end of May, the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, I planned on working a few hours for Mrs. D'Angelo, and then I was going to knock off early and go to a picnic at my Uncle Henry's. Get this, I was even thinking of asking JT to come with us. Memorial Day weekend. I'll never forget it. Because just when things started to come back together, they came undone in a big way. And that's the end of chapter 12, part 2. You have to see what happens next. Check out chapter 13.